All right, everybody. The next talk is Nick Levay with doing counter-cyber espionage and strategy and tactics.
All right, everybody. It's great to be here. Happy to be at SkyDogCon. I see a lot of new faces. Is there anybody here that's been subject to one of my briefings or talks before about this subject? Great, virgins. Very happy about that. Before I get into anything, I do want to second the stuff that Iron Geek was saying about Brad Smith. I don't know if how many folks here know Brad, but he's a really great guy. And he had a stroke just before giving a talk at Hacker Halted in Miami, and there's some collections underway to offset some medical costs and everything. And if you can do that, go for it. Brad's a wonderful person. I was giving a version of this talk last year in Egypt, right before the shit went down, and Brad was at that conference, and I got to hang out with him for like a few days. And he's just a wonderful person. I hate to see what he and his wife and they're going through. So here's what we're. Hello. Oh, wait, we did advance. Okay. So basically, here's the quick little agenda. I'm just going to do a quick little thing so you know who I am and you know who I work for and where I'm coming from, so you can put the message here in a larger context. We're going to talk about what's going on today with cyber espionage. And I'm going to talk about a little high-level strategy for how to approach things, and I'm going to share some operational tactics, things you need to be doing with your network, basically. And we're going to go into Q&A. This talk's the version of this talk I'm giving is kind of set up for assuming folks have been exposed to a lot of FUD about APT and China and all of that, and don't know how to sort what's bullshit and what isn't. So I'm going to attempt to just lay out, the cold hard truth, what's going on, what you need to know, and places you can actually start defending yourself, like things you should be doing on your net. So about me, like many folks here, I'm mostly self-taught. I've been practicing InfoSec in one regard or another since about '97. My educational background is actually in mass communications, not computer science, so I'm kind of coming at this. What did we just have happen there? Let me take a moment to check this. I have a feeling. Is there something up with the cable over there? Try. It's always something, Yeah, they really don't want this information getting out. All right. I'm reluctant on CISSP, which basically means I have sold out completely. I'm a formal sellout. So my specialties are basically information warfare, looking at it full spectrum, how we use information to change people's minds, and how we use our information resources to change other people's information resources. In addition, cyber counterintelligence, which is mostly practicing threat-centric security, and technical operations, network systems, team management, incident response, that kind of stuff. And I have been at like 5 cons in the past month, so I'm conned out. After my talk tomorrow at Freaknik, I am going to try to not be at cons for a month or so, just because I've been losing it. So I work for the Center for American Progress. We're a think tank organization founded by John Podesta, Bill Clinton's former chief of staff, after the Clinton administration ended. Basically decided that we needed a place for people to go after they're coming out of the administration or on their way into administration, or to basically come and work on policy ideas and actually put them in front of lawmakers and try to make a positive difference in our country and how it operates. That's basically what we do. We're 2 organizations. We're both nonprofits, one that's strictly educational, one that can do some advocacy and outreach kind of stuff. We are not lobbyists. We basically just work on stuff from the progressive perspective, and that's what we do. A high visibility organization. It's a really interesting place to work for. A ton of conspiracy theories about it. Like, I can't tell you how many times I speak at a conference or something, I have somebody come up after me and go like, oh, you're that organization that like George Soros pulls the strings of and says to do stuff. And it's just ridiculous how much misinformation there is about like what we actually do. But we in addition to standard think tank type stuff, we're also like a media organization. We run some very high profile websites. Anything progress readers in here? That's the first time I've ever given one. There isn't one. Okay, well, anyway, so we wind up being targeted by a lot of different groups. We definitely have the foreign espionage problem. We have the same high-volume drive-by attacks that everybody sees, all the Eastern European Russian crime syndicates, all that kind of stuff. And it's also a very challenging environment because by design, it's extremely high turnover. Like we have like the picture down there, that's 1/2 of one internship class. We do 4 of those a year. So if you factor in our internship program, we're pretty much 100% a year turnover based on that, even though the core staff is, doesn't change all that much. And a lot of people going out of the organization and into the White House or over to state or over to work on the Hill or something like that. I think the last count is we've sent something like 90 people into the Obama administration since it started. We try to create an environment people can come, work on ideas, and then actually take them into government and implement them. So that's basically what we do. Target rich. I've tried very hard to maintain our environment as open as possible. I like a kind of a campus model. I don't want to tell people that they can't run software, and I like it to be very easy for somebody to make the business case for being able to use something. If somebody comes in and they have a statistics program they want to use, no problem. We'll just vet it. We try to be as open with that as possible. So we're not running our network like a bank where everything's really, really, really locked down. So we've got to be very agile about the way we approach things. And we have a lot of different organizations under one roof, too. It's not just the center. So essentially, I'm running an internet service provider that's trying to create an extremely high security environment. I mean, examples of some of the other groups we have under the roof. One of my favorites is the Satellite Sentinel project. It's amazing what these people do. It's an organization founded between Enough Project and the Harvard Humanitarian Institute. They have basically got Digital Globe and some of the satellite providers to give them, to donate in kind, the highest resolution satellite imagery you can get. And they basically monitor troop movements, mass migrations of people and stuff like that in all the areas where genocide is taking place. Right now, the Sudan being the best example of that. We've discovered mass graves. We were able to get a humanitarian alert out right before a bombing run and save a bunch of lives. Like, we actually have some really hardcore stuff that goes on at the center. So it creates a very challenging environment that we have to kind of track what people are doing so we understand what the threats are against them so we can adequately protect them. So the threat groups that I mostly concern myself these days fall into 3 categories: espionage actors, cyber criminals, and hacktivists. You'll see the same list everybody puts out there. The government folks put terrorists on the list. The only reason that it isn't on mine is I've never seen it. Everything else here I've seen at one point or another. What we're talking about today are the espionage actors. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Now, there are other state-based actors out there that have offensive cyber programs. The Russians definitely do. Israel does. I mean, the list is very, very long. But the one that needs to be on everybody's radar right now is China. Nobody wants to really come out and just say it, although recently it has been, people have been coming out and saying it more. But China's owning wholesale. I mean, across the board, every sector we got. 10 years ago, it was just the defense base. They were going after, the defense contractors and the military. After the Olympics, the gloves came off, and they started targeting the tech sector. They started targeting the financial sector. They started targeting the political sector. Just in the past week, there have been disclosures about satellites being hacked. I mean, they go after birds. Satellites being hacked, chemical companies being hacked. And even the State Department's starting to stand up and say, hey, guys, you're really going a little bit overboard here. You got to tone it down. So that's really where we are. And here comes the point that nobody wants. Yes, the APT. So if you want to talk about a buzzword that's been totally screwed up beyond belief, this is the one. Right now, every vendor out there is using, APT as their FUD of the moment for getting you to buy, their products. You got to protect yourself against APTs. I hate that. Now, the origin of this term is it's an intrusion set. Intrusion set is a term that's mostly used by folks coming from the DoD space to classify an actor when they don't have a full attribution picture. Things that they can lump together based on tools, tactics, or certain indicators. There's an intrusion set, and you associate things with that intrusion set. So as you actually do get some kind of information about attribution or additional techniques that this intrusion set has been using, you can use that to mature your threat intelligence picture. That's where it came from. Air Force started it roughly 2006. I was talking to some of the Mandiant guys recently, and they said they actually found the person who coined the term, and they didn't wring his neck. But this is one of those things. When you hear somebody talk about APTs, they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. If you hear somebody talk about the APT, they might know what they're talking about because it's an intrusion set. I use this term because this is the one everybody uses. And if you're talking about like Chinese espionage with people who have clearances and stuff like that, do not say the word China. Say APT, because the second you start talking about China, they can't talk to you any longer. When you start talking about the APT, as long as it's in that context, people will be able to talk with you more freely. That's a little bit of advice, because this is one of those cases where we're in an unprecedented situation where state-based actors are targeting private industry. And I'll talk about that more. So let's talk about what this actually means, why this term came about. The advanced portion of this, the last bullet point there is really the one that you really need to focus on. If you take one thing away from this, when you think about the advanced and APT, it's about how they adjust their tactics based on your posture. That's it. They're going to own you with the bare minimum necessary stuff to own you. They will use tools from years ago. They will use vulnerabilities that are relatively old, but they'll still get them past your virus scanners and things like that because they know what you're running. They're very good at reconnaissance, and they're very good at making assumptions about what you have. So that's the big takeaway. And we're at the full spectrum of computer intrusion. There's not just one type of technique that you're going to see employed. You're going to see a lot. They have a very, very well-refined playbook. Their tactics are just phenomenal. They're persistent. And that doesn't mean that they're constantly operating in your network all the time. It just simply means that they do not give up. They are formally tasked to accomplish a mission. They are formally tasked to get an intelligence product and deliver it. They work, as best as any of us can tell, like an intelligence unit. They take tasking. They target people based on their tasking. It's focused not just on organizations, but on specific people. And they don't give up. And it's a serious threat. And this is becoming more and more obvious now as time goes on. I've been kind of focused on this space now since about 2008. That's really when this stuff came on my radar. And I'm like, okay, this is an actual threat group. I'm dealing with this. I'm dealing with it every day. And since then, there's been like a gentle awakening taking place within the the security community at large. People laugh and sit back and go, "Oh, it's like unicorns attacking your network." And then year goes by, they got the same stuff going on to them, and they're no longer laughing anymore. So you're going to hear a lot more about this. These groups are they're funded, they're organized, they have extremely good tactics, they have very good playbooks. And I love this quote from Hayden recently. He actually gave this one at Black Hat. Now, think what you will of Hayden. The man is the consummate intelligence professional. He ran NSA. He ran CIA. He knows what he's doing. If he's going to sit back and actually say that he stands in awe and wonderment at what's going on here, pay attention. This is actually real. It is going on. And that same quote, he says it often, right? Now, in terms of the industries and stuff being targeted, we're really talking across the board here. When I was putting together this slide, I just went and just started grabbing logos of companies that had some kind of public disclosure that they got hit by something that they connected to the APT. And the only reason I don't have 4 of these slides is I just got tired of pulling logos. I am not exaggerating when I say every sector out there right now that is doing business that in some way relates to China is being targeted. It's across the board. It's all the think tank. It's all the defense base. It's all the chemical companies. It's everything from the NASDAQ to Dow are feeling this right now. And we talk about team sizes, what you're actually dealing with, what the how organized the opponent is. This is some data I collected from a point where I was monitoring an email harvesting team. Now, I mentioned a little bit earlier that these guys show division of labor. Basically, there'll be a team that'll focus on intrusion. There'll be a team that'll focus on, like, maintaining the intrusions, updating malware, things like that. And other teams actually focused on, just simply exfiltrating information. One of the things that is their holy grails is getting legitimate user credentials. Because at most companies, if you have legitimate user credentials, you can just log into their webmail. They have some form of public access for their people to at least get the email. So you'll see a situation where they got the credentials for the people that they're interested in monitoring, and they'll just log in their webmail and just read their email 2 or 3 times a day. Now, if you look at this, this graph is about 30 days of data condensed down and broken into a time scale for logins and accesses to email by IP addresses that were most definitely associated with APT activity. And if you know, Shanghai and Beijing are exactly 12 hours flipped from Eastern Standard Time. They get in the morning at about 6 o'clock. They do a planning meeting at about 9. They take lunch at 11. I've never seen them miss lunch. They get back from lunch at 12. They work till about 4. They leave if they have a major campaign underway. Maybe they'll come back a little bit after work and do some stuff after hours. That's rigid. That's really rigid. That's a work schedule. That's not a few hackers working out of a basement. And another thing, you put this over on like a week thing, you're talking about a 7-day work week. Now, how many people here work on sizable operations teams? How many people does it really take to maintain a 7-day work week? I mean, that's not like 2 or 3 people. You're talking about your standard cube farm because it's not just one target that they're working. They're working several hundred targets at any given time. We're talking there's some major enterprise going on behind these attacks. The primary method that they're getting in organizations is spear phishing. This shouldn't be news to anybody. Is there anybody here who doesn't know what spear phishing is? Is there anybody here who doesn't educate their people about spear phishing? Yeah, there's at least one person who probably should raise their hand there, I bet. But here's one horrible example that I put up there purposely. From a Yahoo account registered in a misspelled name of our CEO, talking about a benefit adjustment notice with misspellings and document and sent to a big long list of people. Now, needless to say, this one came in. I had people literally run into my office going, "We got one! We got another one!" But these get pretty sophisticated. Here's another example of one. This was a Yahoo account in the name of somebody who was kind of a high up, a former high up defense official that was retired, going to somebody who was also another long-time defense official, talking about trade barriers and whatnot. And basically, there's nothing about this that would have raised anybody's radar aside from the fact that the person normally uses, I think, an AOL account. And in this case, it was coming from a Yahoo account. So, we got another one here. This one trying to look like a mailing list message going out from somebody that, again, everybody who got this message would recognize and know. Going to a bunch of people talking about a conference in Kabul. Here's my notes about this stuff. And in the think tank industry, this is relatively common. I mean, you can watch some of the pundits and think that Cap and Brookings and Heritage and everybody, we're all at each other's throats all the time. It's not the case. People shoot emails all over, sharing their notes on things like that. So it's totally not uncommon. And there's little subtleties like assistant secretary, the A/S and stuff. The way people type things in in these environments, they pick up on and they use. And if and they don't just go like with the attachments with payloads. In this case, this is trying to look like the little attachment dialog at the bottom of a Gmail message, and those are actually links to a site where they basically scraped a weblog or a webmail interface. And just use it to phish credentials, but they we'll figure out where do people go for their webmail, what's that interface look like. We're going to clone that exact interface. We're going to create a domain name for that interface that's like www.mail.americanprogress. Some other domain, mynetav.com, and then have the phishing page. So it's very, very realistic. So even if you're telling people, hey, always look at that address bar at the top of your browser, they know that if they have something that looks realistic enough, but it runs off to the edge of what people see in that address bar when they're using IE9, they're likely to fall for it. So they're pretty smart about that stuff. This is the most stereotypical spear phishing email you'll ever see. And there's one that I like to call engagement spear phishing. I love this one. So here's an email coming from somebody, an email address that's purporting to be a VP level person at CAP going to a junior level person on their team, and it's just some random joke, a really bad joke actually, and it's got the SIG that's similar to a SIG, only it's got that Yahoo address in it, and there's no other content. And okay, this junior person's going to reply back to that or say something like, ha ha ha, very funny, or my boss is sending me these weird jokes, I should be nice. And 5 minutes later, another email coming back like, oh, that's great, please find the attached file, it's about a funny cat. Can't make that shit up. I mean, this is the kind of stuff. So they'll actually attempt to engage people and whatnot to get them to click on the link that can't be unclicked. They're pretty smart about it. And I'll talk about actual defenses for spear phishing, because in most organizations, if your endpoint security isn't going to catch it, you're just toast, or more likely, if whatever you've got doing filtering at your email servers doesn't catch it, your endpoint security sure as hell ain't, because SEP ain't going to catch malware rolled specifically for you. Here's McAfee or anything else. You've got to take it the next step, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So let's assume you've actually got an infection underway. One of the things these guys are really good at is figuring out what your defensive posture actually looks like. If you go for like immediate remediation and just start reinstalling hosts that you've seen owned, I guarantee you're telling them something about what your detection capabilities are. So like here's a little example of a technique that I've seen. So I'll have 2 different malware variants installed on the network. And oh, by the way, they don't just hit you with 1 or 2 malware variants, they hit you more with like 6 or 7 spread across 80 or 90 machines. So you'll have one variant that when it does its beaconing home, it'll do a DNS query for an A record, and then it'll do an HTTP query using the IP address and not referencing the host name. And it'll have another one for like another host that just does your straight HTTP 1.1 query that includes the host name and all that. So if you caught it based on IP and you just filtered out the IP, they got different ways, they can, pivot DNS and basically tell, are you seeing the IP? Are you seeing this in your proxy logs? What are you actually seeing based on what you respond to first? So like, if you detect stuff in your enterprise that's like APT, thoroughly scope the compromise. Don't just immediately start remediating things, because they will learn, are you looking at IPs? Are you looking at proxy logs? Are you looking at DNS? Like here's pure DNS C2. This is real common now. This is being used all over, not just APT. But you have 2 host names. You'll have like mail@domain.com and www.mail@domain.com. And the former or the primary one will go to say Google Apps, the Google Apps IP, or it might go to Yahoo or something like that. And the other one just has a weird address like that doesn't really map to anything of significance. And if that, as long as that IP keeps pointing to Google, it's just going to sleep. It's just going to sleep and check it every 15 minutes or every 5 minutes, or whatever it's coded to do. If that IP changes to anything, it's going to make a back connection out to that IP, and it's going to do it based on a port number that it derived from the email address in the other domain name. I kind of put together how it works. It'll just times the first 2 and the last 2 octets and then add them together. So you can have 4410.3.1, and that means port 443. So all that they have to do to activate this is to change a DNS host to point at something else. Now, that means if you're not doing full logging of all your DNS traffic, you're not going to catch that. And for that matter, if you're doing full logging your DNS traffic, but you're not logging actual responses, you're still probably not going to catch it, because 2 host names like that, that's really innocuous stuff. So detecting C2 for this stuff can be really, really challenging, especially when some of these things, they'll let sleep for a real long time. If they have 7 malware variants, they're only going to use 1 of them regularly, because they're going to assume that you're going to catch that 1 malware variant at some point, and they're still going to have a few other lying. Those other ones that lie, maybe they phone home every 15 minutes. Maybe they phone home once a day. I've talked to people who have seen ones that only phone home once a month. So they will burrow deep. And yeah, many styles. The pure DNS, Pure HTML response, where when it actually does do the request, it'll just have a response that comes back that specifies a basic command like, sleep or connect. HTML comments, all the shady rat stuff. Did anybody pay attention to the shady rat report that McAfee dropped? That's straight out of the variant that they were using. That's one of the most common ones. There's a few additional intrusion sets associated with that are more specific. There's a Shady Rat, which was McAfee's. There's Soy Sauce, Comment Crew. There's a few. But that was really common. And man, the number of companies owned by that particular family of their malware. Image metadata. People have seen image metadata. Post-forum content, Twitter feeds. That's common. Facebook profiles that contain command and control stuff. So you could just have some workstation that's checking a URL at Facebook once every 3 hours. What are you going to think of that? Somebody left a copy of their Facebook account open. Needle in a haystack. So the real reality of how am I doing on time? Good. The real reality of fighting APT. If you haven't heard this phrase, it isn't ingrained in your head as a security professional, get it now. Prevention eventually fails. You're going to have to deal with a situation at some point or another. You're going to get owned. If you're targeted by a group that has funding and motivation to own you, that's it. You're going to get owned. So you have to be prepared for that. They have a plan for when they get caught. I've seen it. They're very good. They will respond sometimes within hours of seeing some malware go offline. I mean, there's both a lot and not much we know about what their playbook actually looks like, but I guarantee you they have a lot of plans for when they get caught. And when you're actually in a real battle with them, kicking APT out of your network, you'll watch them go through your playbook. And when they get to the end of the playbook, man, you're going to be a little bit scared. You're just like, shit, they had logins for all that stuff the whole time. So when you do a remediation, it's got to be vastly sweeping. I mean, you got to change every damn credential in your enterprise kind of stuff. Yeah, the authorities are going to be a little help, right? I mean, you definitely want to reach out to law enforcement. I mean, the FBI counterintelligence side of the house is all over this stuff. And I don't know how many folks here work with law enforcement, but if you haven't, I can tell you they've really gotten their shit together over the past few years. I mean, like FBI stopped taking agents and training them to be hackers. Now they're hiring hackers and training them to be agents. They're actually getting clue over there, and I applaud them. So like, we're used to thinking about information security in the context of like IT, right? Now you got to start thinking about it in the context of counterintelligence, and I'm going to talk more about that as we get a little bit further along here. But at its core, this is a counterintelligence game now. You need to predict your opponent's actions, not just thwart their attempts to own you. You need to actually be predicting which way they're going to move. So when you see attacks come in, you already have a plan for how to respond to not just the attack, but a potential compromise from the attack. And I've said a few times, immediate remediation is often counterproductive. Don't remediate until you've scoped. Unless you're in a situation where you're good. If you're discovering you have a major problem for the first time and it's, you're definitely owned, you're seeing C2 traffic, you're seeing exfiltration, don't just immediately remediate. You're going to make your job worse. If you don't know what to do, start calling in the people who fight this stuff for a living. I mean, it's some of the best advice I can give you. So I'm going to talk about now we're moving into more in the strategy points. I've talked enough about the threat, okay? There's all my FUD. So if you got this problem coming down on you, you have to have top-down support from your organization. Your executive level needs to understand what's going on. You need to be able to have very realistic conversations about risk with your CEO, CFO type people. At this point, if you're not on really good terms with your legal counsel, you really need to be. I mean, it's very important. Everybody needs to realize that this is a very hard thing to fight. I'm going to go over pretty much everything on that list in more detail. Mental preparation, I think, is a big key, a big thing. Because when you find you're in a struggle with a state-backed actor, people freak out. I mean, people freak out. They have very unrealistic expectations about how things are going to go. Like, you're going to call up the FBI, and all of a sudden guys are going to show up in vans, swinging through the windows, and every machine's going to go off to some kind of forensic squad that you're used to seeing on TV. Now, none of that shit happens. I mean, you can make it happen, but you got to pay a lot of money to a lot of private consulting firms, who specialize in doing forensics. If you can be the source of common reason, your organization will need it, and it will very much so appreciate it. So, like, if your company has an interest in anything going on in China or does business in China, prepare yourself. It's going to go down at some point. And have fun with it, man. How often do you get to fight spies? And I have a little thing about mantras. Sometimes when my thinking's getting all over the place, I try to bring myself down to the ground and remind myself of how you approach these things high levels. My favorite one when it is study, empathize, defeat. That's how you defeat any type of opponent. You study them, you learn about them, you try to think like they think. You try to think about what their concerns are, what their wants are, what they're going after, and then you use that mindset that you get yourself in to defeat them. And this is an old fencing mantra. I can't even remember who posted this up on their blog, and I just thought it was great. These are great questions to ask yourself when you're actually dealing with a real opponent. So I try to find things like this, and I'll just put them on little Post-it notes and stick them in my office. So at certain points when I just need something to throw my mind into a different context, I do that stuff. So everybody's seen that pyramid at the top, the basic information security process. Detection, response, and prevention. Everything feeds the next step. The thing you need to be really doing at your organizations is building up that threat intelligence that you use to feed that entire system, to inform that entire process. Because internally, you've got to have an idea of what you're actually fighting. There's this concept of vulnerability-centric security and threat-centric security. And most of the time we practice vulnerability-centric security or weakness-centric security. We're looking at where our weakest spots are and we're trying to improve them. And you obviously need to do that. But I think in the modern climate, you also need to practice that threat-centric security and look at it from the perspective that maybe your CFO would. What are the actual threats to my organization? What are the actual risks, and how do I mitigate those risks? And you need to figure out where the balancing points for that are. And use that to inform your overall response. And I said this earlier. We're playing a counterintelligence game now. I mean, really, get this one in your head. We're only going to see more situations where specific actors are targeting specific companies or specific sectors to try and get intellectual property that is some type of value. If it's China today, it'll be somebody else tomorrow. So I think that's one of the evolutions that our industry is going to go through. And I've discussed this with a lot of people, particularly some former high-level officials. I actually kind of pitched my take on this to David Chertoff a few weeks ago at MIRCon. He's like, "Yeah, that's what we're telling people." I'm like, "Okay, good enough for me." So where do you start building a threat intelligence program internally? First, the hardest one, and I put this at the top of the list because it's the last you'll get done, is classifying your data. Now, you got to do this for two reasons. One of them security, and one straight up business continuity. From a security perspective, you need to know the stuff that is most important to protect so you can structure your security controls around that stuff. Now, at a lot of companies, this begins and ends with HIPAA and PCI. Your credit card data and health information and personally identifiable information. Obviously, those are the things we need to protect more. But it's amazing how many companies don't think about the design plans for the things they actually build and their business processes. A business process is a hard thing to come up with. If you build a company that builds widgets, your profit margin is based on how efficiently you build your widgets. So you'd be surprised how much business processes themselves are of interest to espionage actors. Now, how much protections do you have around that in your organization? Not much. So you've got to seriously ask that question, and it's easy to kind of put it in the business continuity framework because you also need to know what type of data needs to come back first in the event of a disaster. What's the stuff that we can't live without for 12 hours? What about 24 hours? What about a week? What's the stuff it doesn't matter as long as it's back online before we close the books at the end of the month? You need to figure out what that stuff is, both from that continuity perspective and from the security perspective, because it will inform everything you do. And you need to follow what's going on. You just simply need to know what's going on. And you need to track their targets. If you have people in your organization that are of specific interest to an espionage actor, you need to know who they are. You need to sit down. You need to have a conversation with them. And you need to just, tell them, like, hey, you're somebody who's likely going to be targeted or is targeted. You need to know that if you see anything weird, I have a very low threshold for weird, come tell me. I don't mind fielding false positives. I would rather, look at 10 different emails that you think are weird than, miss one that isn't. And basically audit the hell out of everything those people do. Because at some point, they're likely to be compromised. And if you're regularly looking at where they're logging in from and what times and stuff like that, you're going to detect that unauthorized activity before anything else. And that also ties into that kind of counterintelligence process. So another strategy point I really like is the kill chain. Hold on, I need a drink. Sorry, I'm trying to get out a lot of information here. So kill chain, I like this concept. Mike Clopper, the guy at Lockheed, where's it, Northrop? I can't remember. He came up with this. I put his URL down there. And I really like this, this model. I've kind of adopted it for how I look at preventing attacks. So you have a few stages of a successful attack, right, that the attacker is going to go through. They're going to do some reconnaissance. They're going to learn a little bit about your organization. Maybe it's just names of people and conferences they've attended and stuff like that, so they can come up with a good spear phishing email. They're going to weaponize something. They're going to create a payload. Maybe it's a Word document with, an exploit, 3 weeks old, but is still likely to work. And they're going to roll that up. They're going to deliver it to you somehow, most likely an email, spear phishing attack. You're going to run that. It's going to exploit something on your system. And then it's going to install something on your system. It's going to establish C2, and then once they have C2 established, whatever they're going to do inside your network or move laterally or whatnot can occur. And then the game over moment, exfiltration, data's out. They've got something. So that's the kill chain. Any point in that you can disrupt, you can stop an attack. You have every one of those opportunities to stop an attack. Now, there's this one thing that we've been saying in this industry for years, which is, as an information security professional or IT professional, you have to be right all the time. The attacker only has to be right once. And, there's a lot of truth to that, but remind yourself, it's not that simple. You have a lot of opportunities to stop any given attack. So when you're doing your threat modeling and you're thinking to yourself, how are attackers going to get in? This is a really, really, really good model. And every stage you have an opportunity to collect intelligence about the attacker, what IPs they're using, techniques, things that you can use to build your concept of the intrusion set that you're dealing with. So examples. If you might be able to catch things at the delivery phase if you already have some form of IP intelligence about what IP addresses are being used by the attackers. Another thing about APT, they don't run huge botnets. They use proxies. Usually on very fast, stable, reliable networks, and they will use them for years at a time. I've talked to a number of people about this stuff, and I'm like, yeah, we only have, over the course of a year, maybe see 30, 40 IPs involved with attacks. So, there's a lot to be said there. That's probably changing now because we're all talking about that with each other. So. Probably game over on that one, but anyway. Exploitation. The more you keep your stuff up to date, the less threat surface you have at that level of the kill chain. Installation, execution control. I'm going to talk more about this. This is one of my favorite little things these days. If they can't actually drop files and have them execute, they can't get their malware in hold. And C2, you're already into detection now, but prevention to a certain degree. If you have good deep packet inspection going on in your network, IDS, IPS, whatever it may be, you have an opportunity to stop them there. And then egress traffic control, or DLP, you can actually stop them from being able to get out data. So these are, and there's multiple different things you can do with these different stages. And what it really comes down to is good old defense in depth. Layering security controls. If you are depending on one security control to stop an attack, you are doing it wrong. I cannot stress that enough. Anytime you have an attack, even one that you thwart, even one that you block, you should look at it and go, okay, was the thing that stopped it the only thing in the line that was going to stop this attack? If your answer is yes, you need to mature more. You need to come up with a better way to do it. Because remember, that prevention is eventually going to fail, especially if you're being targeted. If you're dealing with a real targeted actor here, they're going to look at that one thing that stopped their attack, and they're going to go, okay, how can I get around that? And odds are, at some point or another, they're going to find a way to do so. So you always need to make sure that you have another thing in the line that's going to stop that same type of attack class that you're seeing. And that's a challenge. But if that's the challenge that you're dealing with, trying to make sure that you always have another line for if that prevention that's working right now fails, that's a much more fun problem to be working on than dealing with constant remediation and constant re-imaging machines and scoping compromise and doing forensics on a attack. It's more fun to be structuring your security controls. So now we're getting really into the whole operational tactics. Log management and SIM is just critical. You've really got to be a master of all the data that your enterprise is generating that has a security value to it. I mean, most people have no idea how many logs actually exist in their enterprise. How many a second that they have that they're not even collecting, that are just living out at devices all over the place. You got to kind of bring that stuff home. And I'll bounce back. But there's a lot of stuff you got it there, man. You got firewall logs. You got all the logins for Active Directory. You got all your database servers, file servers, Unix systems, custom applications, and now we have stuff that we're pushing out to the cloud. And I'm going to go into that more. But when looking at like SIM products, and there are a lot of them out there. ArcSight and Nitro are really cool. I'm using Logarithm. If any of the big like enterprise ones aren't available to you or you can't afford them, Splunk is awesome. I mean, I really love Splunk. When you're looking at this stuff, a few things that I'd share my experiences. The X-ray operator syndrome. Now, I'm sure when you fly, you've noticed when standing in line at the security checkpoints, they constantly cycle people through the different job roles. The guy who's sitting operating the X-ray machine after 15 minutes gets swapped out and just collects buckets, and then the guy collecting buckets winds up being the guy who does this in front of the the X-ray machines. And they do that kind of switching of roles because after you do the same thing for 15, 20 minutes, 45 minutes, your brain turns to mush. Now, when you're doing hardcore analytics and looking at log data and correlating log data and looking around, looking for strange stuff and whatnot, your brain turns to mush in about 40 minutes. You're done. I actually tried to kind of figure out what the threshold was for an average person for how much hardcore analytics you could do in one day. And really it comes down to you got about 3 periods, about 3 45-minute periods over a course of a day where you're really going to be effective and asking questions of the data that might allow you to find a strange pattern. So be aware of that, and whatever solutions you're looking at, keep that in mind. You're either going to be looking for something specific and you need to find that quickly. And everybody talks about all the reporting and stuff like that. A lot of times you just generate a report once. So keep that in mind. If it's hard to make that kind of stuff happen, it's probably not the direction you want to go in. It's not about the damn dashboard. It's about getting useful reports and being able to ask questions and get answers quickly. So, network segmentation is critical. And this is both one of the easiest and the hardest things to do. On one level, it's very easy to say, this subnet over here is servers, and this subnet over here is users. And we're putting policy for everything between those two things. If there's a file server over there, fine, they can get at an SMB, but they can't get it at the myriad of RPC ports, and they can't get at RDP. If I got a Linux server over here running a bunch of wikis, no, they can't get at it at SSH. And you just say you have your users here, your servers here, and your administrators back over there. That stuff is easy to say, kind of hard to actually implement. But that's one of the things that you need to be doing. Because that is one of those places where you get to put additional security controls on top of things. We all have authentication domains that are in our enterprises. Active Directory. Anything that's plugged into it. They're sharing this authentication base. If Active Directory gets owned, sometimes one of the only things that may thwart an attacker is having some network level controls that prevent a user from actually being able to just simply RDP into the damn machine, or maybe it's accessing SMB or RPC or something like that. So like you can actually do a lot here, and it can matter. In particular, there's going to be a lot of devices that are very, very, very hard to harden, like printers and stuff like that. Printers are a freaking nightmare. if you can just get all your printers off into their own little subnet, and everybody's got to talk through a print server to get to them, you've got a whole bunch of rogue devices you don't have to worry about anymore. If you've got a certain set of machines that you can really only perform security updates on twice a year or quarterly or something like that because it's got some custom application that blah, 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 segment the damn shit off. And really limit access control to it. That type of stuff really matters. You know, kiosks and things like that. I mean, all this kind of stuff. And you know, there's more firewall vendors out there that can address this problem and have products where you can just connect it up to a nice switch and be able to do traffic cop between VLAN and manage policy pretty easily. It's one of those things that really matters. Now, some of the best practices here, in the picture of the Magnat line from France, which kind of fits, is administrators should not be on the same segments as users. And your help desk should not be on the same segment as your high-level admins. Because if you do wind up in a situation where you had an attacker get inside your network and started to move laterally a lot, you've got to be able to wield that back. You've got to be able to scope that compromise. You've got to be able to work at it. And if that happens, and you're sitting there going, man, I can't trust my own workstation right now, and neither can any of my people, all of a sudden you're in a really bad position. If you think your management systems have been owned, you're in a really bad position. So if there's any place that you're going to start doing a network segmentation within your enterprise, do it where you work first. Do it for your teams, for your help desk teams, for your development people, your sysadmins. Segment like mad in that space. And make sure that no matter what, you do have certain segments of your organization where you have computers that people aren't just using to browse the internet and stuff like that you can actually administer things from in the event you have a breach. This could be the only thing that saves your ass and allows you to respond to a breach. I'm serious about that. So like egress traffic control, DLP, however you want to call it, you've got to have a real grasp for what people are actually doing out on the internet. You've got to be able to link IPs on your address to users, to the actual people who are using them, or the stake owners or the stakeholders for a given server or whatever it is. And there are a number of different approaches to do that, but the stuff you really you got to have. You got to log all the connections, okay? There's no privacy concerns in the enterprise to the degree that somebody's going to tell you can't log. There's no constraints on institutional privacy. So come up with an internal policy that says you're not going to snoop on your users and dive into these logs just to see what somebody's web browsing and collect all the information. Because again, if you have a compromise, you're going to need to scope it. And if you weren't keeping logs and you don't have them running back for a few months, you might not be able to scope it. You might miss the fact that one of the internal machines that was compromised was talking to a kiosk out in the hallway at some point and installing a piece of malware on it that only phones home once a month. You might miss that when you're scoping, but you might catch it if you're keeping all the logs. So, that's important. And your servers don't need to talk to the damn internet, the vast majority of them. Your print server doesn't need to talk to the internet. Your file servers don't need to talk to the internet. Maybe they do to get updates or something like that, but have that be whitelist based. Anything that actually needs to even mail servers. Mail servers need to send mail. They don't need full internet. They don't need to be making, web page requests from things. So limit that stuff down and set alerts and stuff on it so that if all of a sudden the server starts talking to a host out on the internet, you got red flags going up in your, in your security team's inboxes. Here, hold on, you adjust something here. I mean, that's a great way to catch something going down right there, just simply by limiting the ability of servers to collect outside traffic. And looking into layer 7 activity, I found logging URLs to be very useful because you can, if you do detect something that's a possible phone home. Yeah. Oh, 5 minutes already. Damn, I need to really move. Okay. Naming and lookups. You got to have complete control of that in your enterprise. You need to control your DNS servers. You need to have logging going on there extensively, and you need the ability to black hole DNS names. If you don't have it, you're toast. because if you detect something that's phoning home and you've identified 4 classes of malware and you've identified their phone home methods, if you can cut that off, you can come up with a really good remediation plan. If every single machine is on its own and they can pivot around based on that DNS, you're toast. And there are things you can use to make this easy, like use OpenDNS. They allow you to have block lists and things like that. Update and vulnerability management. I mean, this is, update management should be straightforward to everybody, right? I mean, everybody here has every Windows machine in their enterprise updated within 48 hours, right? Yeah. I actually went over to Hacking Con in Beijing in 2009 just to get a feel for like what our community there was working on, and it was all about reverse engineering exploits from code. Basically, taking the updates that Microsoft just dropped and developing the exploits that those updates were for, like reverse engineering, that kind of stuff. It was kind of the theme. And one of the things everybody's seen in the wild now is that the bad guys are able to go from a patch to a working exploit in like 72 hours. So that means the old 2-week cycle of, oh, updates are going to come out, we're going to apply them to this set of machines immediately, and then we're going to, before we deploy it everywhere, we're going to wait 2 weeks to see if there's any problems. Sorry, it's untenable, it doesn't work anymore, those days are over, that method is dead, you need to start convincing your IT people that that doesn't work anymore. And you should own a vulnerability management system. By this I mean like a scanner, something that's constantly scanning your network, looking for vulnerable services and versions of things. Because that is a living data set. You will never be in a situation where you do not have vulnerabilities present. But you need to know which are the really bad ones and which aren't, and be able to focus your efforts. And I think that having something that gets at least like weekly scans that you can review is something you really need. And my favorite thing of the moment right now, and I'll just say I'm a bit 9.4, man. I love those people. Application whitelisting is the endpoint security that we've been waiting for. A good solution for this is basically what we've been waiting for. Antivirus is based on blacklists. The antivirus vendor finds viruses, they build signatures for them, and they maintain this massive blacklist. And all your machines have that blacklist, and they block anything in it. Well, when you got actors that are rolling malware specifically for you and testing it against all the major antivirus, it's worthless. It's just something you're paying $7 a seat for every year that's getting you nothing. So forget about it. Just forget about antivirus. And there are a lot of whitelisting solutions trying to come out there. The market leader is definitely Bit9. I seriously suggest looking at the stuff. I mean, there are certain vendors I'm more than happy to endorse. They're one of them. Palo Alto I love too. This basically does the opposite. You maintain a whitelist of what's allowed to run in your enterprise. You set up ways for things to get on that whitelist. Like when updates come out every month, they get whitelisted and stuff like that. And anything that isn't in the whitelist simply can't run. So that means you get that spear phishing email that comes in that has an attachment. It's going to drop a file or execute some code. Oh, wasn't on the whitelist. Sorry, not going to run. So this is the kind of technology we need to go. We need to have like no trust within our networks aside from what we allow. And that's kind of the only way that we're going to defeat like these targeted actors. So, all right, I think I got out. I think I got out of much of the stuff that I wanted to. So I think in like the last 3 minutes here, for whatever time we have, I guess we'll do some QA. So who thinks I'm full of shit? Any questions? Well, the big plague that's hitting everybody is all the rogue AV stuff, which I think is the class that falls into. That's the Eastern European and Russian crime syndicates. That's a straight up crime. They're not espionage actors, and they are in many ways the canary in the coal mine for your organization. If your organization has the fake AV infection every so often, just you're not in a position to be able to defend yourself against an actual targeted actor. But which, by the way, the thing I was practically endorsing there, no, I was endorsing, stopped dead in its tracks. Because the Rogue AV stuff is a great example. You know, they got these kits you can go out and buy for like $500 that has all the the fake AV screens and all that stuff, and you can take that, roll it in your own malware, and get it out there and use it to infect stuff. They actually have licensing terms by seat and things like that. So if you're maintaining a botnet of like 60,000 nodes, you can pay money off to the guy who's writing the software kit you're using, and he'll keep sending you updates. I mean, there's an actual cottage industry around it, and it's all just organized crime. Just because something's phoning home to an IP address, you can't necessarily say, oh, that's where it's coming from. But sometimes you can just point at it and go, okay, that's Eastern European or Russian crime type stuff. And sometimes you'll be able to point at something and go, oh, that might be APT. I think the one you're talking about fell into the more of the cybercrime actors.
I just wanted to reinforce what you said about segmentation.
Mm.
A couple of weeks ago, I was on an internal pin. We got DA within the first few hours of being on site, and their CFO said, "Who cares? You're not in my cardholder data network, right? We've done network segmentation." So we were able to find their jump server, which was authenticating off of the same AD that we own, into their jump server, and then RDP to boxes that were inside their cardholder data network.
Yeah.
Those boxes were also authenticating off of the same AD. So if you screw up segmentation, it doesn't matter if you have network controls in place. Because,
Yeah, you're totally right.
you can still just sign onto the box. And there's no IDS or IPS that's going to pick that up. It's basic Windows functionality. So when you do that segmentation, segmentation, and assuming there weren't any password reuse issues, would have stopped me dead in my tracks, right? I wouldn't have been able to get to their CDN, but as it turns out, I went back an hour later and said, okay, now I have your CDN. What else? Right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it's true. And like I say, it's both the hardest and the easiest. The easiest because there's always something you can be doing in terms of network segmentation to improve your enterprise. It's the hardest in that there's a lot of cultural problems too, and that like the help desk people may be like, what do you mean I can't just log directly into the server and make changes? That I can't do this from this segment? And it's like, sorry, that's a segment that you're browsing the internet from and stuff like that, and that you're taking clients into. You could be working on a laptop that's infected with something and be able to get to that system. It's like, it's like okay, tough. And that can be hard at first, but, Okay, I think that's it. My time is up. Thank you very much.